Hey y'all, I'm Jennifer with Spark Flash Fiction, and I am here today with Jennifer Chastain, author of We Belong Together. So I'm going to introduce her real quick and then we'll get started. Ever since she was a little girl living in her small town in New York State, Jennifer has been a voracious reader. During the summer months, she would ride her bike to their library and return with a basket full of books. Her dad's job moved them to Charlotte, North Carolina in her teen years, but the memories of growing up in a small community have stayed with her. A Yankee transplant, she has grown to love the grace and charm of the South. In fact, she even married a native Charlatan. Jennifer is a member of ACFW, ACFW NC, My Book Therapy / Novel Academy, and Blue Ridge Reader Connections. She was a finalist in the Touched by Love contest, sponsored by the Faith, Hope, and Love Christian Writers. Her contemporary romance and romantic suspense stories contain the themes of redemption, grace, forgiveness, and second chances. When not working full time at the local university, she is a writing ninja, cramming in as many words as possible at night and on the weekends. A hopeful romantic, Jennifer loves dark chocolate, Diet Coke, old movies, and a good rom-com. So Jennifer, let's start off by talking about your story, We Belong Together. What was the inspiration behind that?
Actually, it was my niece. Brooke, my niece's name is Brooke, so the main character's name is Brooke. And she told me one day, she said, "Why don't you write a story about me?" And I'm like, okay. She's a pistol. But anyway, she, teenager. But anyway, and then after I wrote it, she said, "But nobody knows it was me because you didn't put my last name in there." but I said, well, if they know you, they can probably pick up on some of the characteristics of the main character, the heroine. But I've always, looking back, growing up in a small town and then moving to a big city, now that the small town holds a lot of nostalgia, because I'm sitting there thinking, I'd really like to go back and live in a small town. I'm tired of this big city traffic. But the other thing, I think, I just love the fact that she's not your perfect girl, and and I like the fact that they were. I was just thinking, how do I get them together? How can I make them know each other? And believe it or not, while I was sitting listening to the webinar y'all put on back in September, it just, the idea just popped in my head. I'm like, oh, what if they had the same birthday? What if their mothers were friends, from the get-go? So that's how it just started. I mean, I don't know who said what during, which of the talks, but just the idea just like popped in my head. I'm like, I think I can run with that. And so, of course, small town, and then with him being big, in the big city, and then, best friends. I had a best friend growing up, kind of like that, but we never, we lost touch over the years, but not the same birthday, but, parents, his mom used to babysit me, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where all those experiences from the past, that's kind of where, I got the inspiration for the story.
I love that because, it's so funny how like these little tiny things that seem innocuous sometimes and like you would never imagine them going together, but somehow you managed to make them into a story. And I love that. So I do have a question for you. Since you named your main character after your niece, was it hard to come up with a man that you felt like would fit her?
Yeah, because, in my romantic suspense book, the main character's name is Jack. And I told her, she said, "Jack? What kind of name is Jack? That's so so teenager, and I'm like, well, that's what came to me, and I'm thinking, what kind of a cool name can I give the guy, and so I was just sitting there going, I haven't used any A names lately, in any of my stories. So I'm thinking, what about Ashton? I've always liked the name Ashton, and I'm like, yeah, it's an Ashton, so it seemed to fit for me, with the storyline and with, with his background and everything. So, and I always look up baby names that are popular from whatever year or however old, I perceive the character. So, in the past 30 years, Ashton has been a kind of a popular name too. So I'm like, yeah, I think his mama would have picked something popular, or she might have been a Harlequin romance reader, because they always have those kind of names.
Yeah. Well, now you mentioned that you also do romantic suspense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, what subgenre of romance is your favorite then?
Well, I really like contemporary romance, and I really like romantic suspense. The romantic suspense, I just kind of the books I just kind of fell into those stories. It Can I talk about that for a second?
Go for it.
Okay. So about, what was it, 2.5 years ago, I think. My mom taught a student at the Christian school, and he went into law enforcement. Okay, after he graduated, and then he eventually ended up with the ATF. Yeah, and so, but then he, it's that, the kind of the character sort of based on him, but he was killed in the line of duty. So I was sitting there going, I think there's more. My little conspiracy mind just starts rolling, and I'm thinking, well, what if he really wasn't dead? What if he went under deep cover? What if all this other stuff, So, and that's how my first romantic suspense, Lethal Intentions. It was originally just titled Targeted for Elimination. So when I sent off the manuscript to Anaya Press, well, I had originally submitted it to Love Inspired Suspense, and they said, we have something like this coming out this year. And I'm like, oh, great, So I went back to Anaya, and they loved it. And then they said, you think you could write 2 more stories, And I'm like, sure, I'll give it a shot. But with me being a reader, I read across genres. Like the first book that was my favorite was Jane Eyre as a 12-year-old girl, because that was kind of creepy, and there was that suspense element to it too. So I guess I've just absorbed all that stuff over the years, and have really, really the genre doesn't, as long as it's well written. Only thing I don't read is like horror. I'm not a horror fan, but I've read historical, you name it, I've probably read it.
So, what are some sweet romances then that you've read lately that you just really enjoyed?
Oh, yeah. If you follow Emma St. Clair, her rom-coms are just, lately she's just gotten into a groove. With everything that she's written. So I follow her. I read The Sweater Weather. I had to write down the names because I'm not good with, let's see. I read her, The Sweater Weather collection, but the Absolutely Not in Love was by Jenny Proctor. I read that one. I love that one. Just Don't Fall by Emma St. Clair. That was the first one in the series. And then the other one that I really enjoyed was Can't Help Falling by Courtney Walsh. Okay, so those are some pretty heavy hitters. And reading those, and then I also read Not His Type, which was a kind of a friends to more trope by Lisa Crane. It's been out there a while, but sometimes you just find gems, on Kindle Unlimited, or they're on sale for nothing, so I'll download it if it interests me. I'll read it. And then I did read One Starry Christmas. I just finished One Starry Christmas by Mary Felkins. So I met Mary at one of the Deep Thinker retreats, one of the last ones that Susan May Warren did. So it's a lot of different styles in there, but if it's well written, I'll just devour it.
Well, I noticed a lot of different tropes in there too. So do you have one that you find yourself gravitating toward?
Lately it's been the I really like the second chances because my first book, Mistletoe Contract, was a second chance trope. And then Lethal Pursuit is best friend's brother or brother's best friend. So I like those. I like the second chance, the best friends, and then friends to lovers. Those are the three that I find myself using over and over again too in my tropes because I like them and they're easier for me to, if I can combine several different tropes, with the story, then I think you've got a little bit deeper story too. But yeah, I really like the friends to lovers. That's probably one of my favorites.
I have to say I'm partial to that one too. But you've mentioned that you've gone to a retreat with Susan May Warren, and I know you're part of her Novel Academy. So I'm sure you have some advice that you can bestow that you've learned. So I want to know the best writing advice that you've ever received.
Two things. Don't give up. And the second thing is you're going to get rejected. As a writer, you will receive rejections, even though you think this is the best thing I've ever written in my entire life. But you have to grow a tough skin, and that's kind of hard, and you can't take it personally either. You have to realize, okay, yeah, and even though I've gotten rejected from other publishers, like, look, your writing is really good, but this is not what we're looking for at this time, or this doesn't fit. We don't have any room for this at this time. Maybe submit, another time, or, so you just have to keep plugging along, regardless of whether you have a contract or not. You just have to keep writing, because if you don't, I find that when I take big breaks in writing, my writing kind of suffers because I'm like, I'm just like not in the groove. But if I find that I can write even just a little bit every day, then, or most days, then, you stay within that same mindset of how to get it on the page, what readers need, the stakes and everything that you have to, put in to make a good story.
Now, in your bio, it mentions that you squeeze writing in between like a full-time job.
Yeah.
So tell us, what are some things that you've learned to be able to fit writing into a very busy schedule?
Well, what I normally do is on the weekends. Let me backtrack. During the week, if I have a break or if I'm on lunch or lunch break or something, I'll look for different memes or different things that I can post for social media, because you have to have that platform. So I'll find stuff during the week that I want to post or, put in my newsletter, and then just save that to a different file. So I've got it on hand when I need it. Usually on Saturdays or Sundays, I'll take probably 2 hours and get all my social media posts scheduled for the whole week. So I prep everything. I might have to go in and do something with BookBrush or Canva or something, but at least I've got everything ready to go. I already have my hashtags. I keep a running list of hashtags for social media. So that's what I do for social media. And I'm doing a monthly newsletter. It seems to better. It keeps people more engaged. And now that I have more books under my belt too, it seems to help. And now that I've got the flash fiction piece, which I have never in my entire life written before, that just helps. And especially with flash fiction. I want to go back to the flash fiction for just a second. I came up with, after you guys had the webinar and everything, all of a sudden all these little ideas, just little snippets were coming to me, and I'm like, I need to write these down. So I keep a running notebook too of ideas, or a file on my laptop, like flash fiction ideas. I've already written two others, I think, that I can use for magnets, for freebies for people. So that was such great advice that you all gave. So anyway, back to the writing. So right now I'm just waiting on edits from book 3. So in between that time, since I don't have edits yet coming back from the editor, I have been working on a contemporary romance that I was given an oral contract, and they said, look, if you can get these 3 books in, they didn't give me a time frame, which was fine because I had just found out I'd had the contract for the romantic suspense. They haven't pushed me, and they're like, and there's some things have happened with that publisher, but they're still there. Okay. But it's a small press. But anyway, and they pointed out some major problems. Those were the first couple books I'd written. Okay, so after I've written them, now I'm going back and I see, oh, that's not good. But anyway, so I guess the more you write, the more you're able to notice the problems in your own stories. So with me, working full time, it is challenging because I have a very stressful job at the university. I'm a business services coordinator, which means I'm a paper pusher, basically. But I handle a lot of different funding and accounts, and and at the end of the day, you're just like, oh, I can't deal with numbers anymore. So writing is my creative outlet at night. So even once I set up my story, I use Scrivener. Once I set up my story in Scrivener, I can go back and say, okay, what am I writing tonight? Where did I leave off from the night before? So even if I write just an hour, I can usually get maybe 750 words in, 1,200, which is almost a scene that you can, because if you don't have anything on the page, you can't edit it. I've heard that so many times. So that's basically my schedule. Since I'm working on a story I'm familiar with, and with Susan May Warren, she has, what she calls the SEQ, the scene equation, and her Lindy Hop, and basically you're outlining your whole story. So by the time you do all those, and I do character research, which takes usually a couple weeks for me because I go in and do the 5 love languages skills for them. I'll do a Myers-Briggs personality assessment because I kind of know who they are, but I want to kind of dig a little deeper. And I even use the Enneagram for Authors by Kara Putnam, so I've got a lot of resources. But once you get used to using all that stuff, it seems to flow a little bit better. And once I get that outline into Scrivener, and just with a snippet of this is what's going to happen here, this is what's going to happen, and I'll go back and reread what I wrote the night before or the day before or whenever, and then I'll say, okay, yeah, now I see where I want to go with that. So it's just keeping yourself fresh, and the craft books, and just connecting with other writers, and even writing a flash fiction piece, because that really helped me a lot. Yeah, it just helps with the creativity. Sometimes you need to switch gears in your creativity too. And that's why I wrote that flash fiction, because at that point I was just like, I got nothing right now. I got nothing. And I'm like, well, maybe let me just try this, and once I did that, it's like, oh, okay. I can, the creative juices started flowing again, and, I'm starting to get more ideas too. So, yeah, I hope I didn't bore you with all
No,
that.
That was a lot of really good information.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how I work. I'm kind of a plotter, but also kind of a pantser, because, I kind of know where it's going to go, but sometimes the characters take the story in a totally different, vein than you're like, well, what happened there? But as you delve into your characters, you're able to do that, I think, a little better. I think, and again, it goes back to the more you write, the more you know your characters, the more, you can get into the story, and it's almost like they're dictating to you what's going to happen. But that's okay, because it still kind of follows. I'm still going to get from point A to point D. The B and C might be a little different than what I imagined, but I'm still able to get to the end of the story, and to the the big finale, the Black Moment event, and the happily ever after at the end.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting because I know, like, I've talked to like several different authors, and everyone has like their own method that works for
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah.
you just have to experiment, and you have to
Exactly.
find whatever works for you in your brain instead of trying to mold yourself into
Right.
being exactly like another writer.
Right. As much as I admire, like Rachel Hawk and Susie May Warren and, and their writing style, I'm never going to be them in writing voice. I'm me, I express things totally different than what they do, but that's okay. We all have a different writing voice, but you can always learn and see how they phrase things. I think that's the big thing. As a writer, you've got to read, all these other different things in order to help you with, developing your writing voice too.
Yeah, I agree. Now, before we hop off, I want to circle back to your romantic suspense series that's going to release soon. When can we expect that first book again?
Okay, the first book was released this past February.
February, okay.
Lethal Intentions. Lethal Pursuit came out this October 23rd. So October 23rd, Lethal Pursuit has been out for about a month, 5 weeks. And then the final book in that series, but I do have plans. So I do have an idea for a fourth book. The final book right now is called Lethal Connections. So that releases in February of 2024. So
yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, and they're all on Amazon. So you can just find me under my name. I don't have a pseudonym. I'm here.
Now, what connects these stories? Is it characters? Is it a location? Is it a certain like branch of the government?
Okay. The characters are connected, okay, in a loose way, but it's mainly the location. The location is Hawaii, the Big Island of Hawaii. So the story either starts there, but they're all the main male characters all know each other or have worked with each other in the past. Lethal Intentions, he was an ATF agent. Lethal Pursuit, he's an FBI agent. Okay. But he knew the ATF agent, get backstory, they were friends. All right. So then the final one, Lethal Connections, this guy was in witness protection, but they had to move him around. So in a way, they've all shifted, and he's been like a contact for them on the Big Island. So that's how that one kind of works.
Ooh, I love that. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah. I'm really pleased with it, because they're all so different, but they're kind of the same in a way, but they are all interconnected in a way. So
did you have to do a lot of research on the different agencies?
I did. And the thing about it is I started these during COVID. So there's nobody, everything was Google, and then I do have a dear friend, Tammy Karasik, who she and her husband had visited the Big Island several times, and they were even planning to move there. But that fell through for them. So I just picked her brain, like, what about this? What about this food? What about, the temperature? What about this? What about that? I said, where's a good place for this to happen? And so, and she's the one that suggested, oh, there's always lava flows coming across the roads. And I'm like, oh, I did not know that, so from the volcanoes. So, so there, a lot of the stuff, that she suggested, I kind of sprinkled them around in the different novels. So.
Oh, wow. I love that attention to detail.
Yeah.
That is so great. All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for joining us tonight. And thank you, everyone that's watching, whether you're watching live or the replay. You can go check out Jennifer on her website. And then she said that her books are also on Amazon. Is that correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
All right. And so whether you like contemporary romance or romance suspense, you're bound to find something, it sounds like, that you were.
Because I write both. At this point.
I love it. Because sometimes you're in the mood for some suspense.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you're like, I am like very suspicious of everybody right now. Yes. So I think I need to take a break.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed sharing, my books and my writing process too.
Well, we've enjoyed it too, and we also enjoyed your story. I'm so glad that you submitted, even though you said that you had never done
I
flash
never,
fiction before.
that's the first time I've ever written one like that.
You know,
So
sometimes the risk is worth it.
absolutely, you have to take a risk. As a writer, if you're not a risk taker, forget it. That's the truth.
You just hit submit and then you take a nap.
That's right.
So good night, everyone. I hope y'all find a great book to cozy up with. And if you're looking for something super short, you can always check out our website for some short stories to get you through the week. Have a great rest of your week, y'all.